I've been wanting to show how to build these life-size standees because I know not everyone has the skill or the patience to build the 3D models I actually build. But I do every now and then build a standee for certain characters like this one right here. And like I said, I do want to show how to actually build these things, but I have no idea how to actually go through with it because doing a tutorial like this is a little difficult for me because it just comes to me naturally and it's a little hard for me to explain the actual build process. So I'm going to try and make this video as understandable as possible, but hopefully I can get this video done right. So with that said, let's start off by what we actually need. We're obviously going to need a computer. I would suggest a Windows machine. I don't know if you can do this on macOS, and I'm fairly certain you can't do this on Linux. Why the hell are you using Linux in the first place? Go to your local e-recycler and buy a cheap Dell Latitude like this for a few bucks and put Windows on it. There might be a way to get it to work on Mac. Well, actually, there is a way, and that is through Boot Camp. I'm not going to show how to do Boot Camp on Mac because that's not what this video is about, but boot camping a Mac computer is very easy. But if you're using the M1 models or newer, you're kind of out of luck. Again, as far as I know, you can only do this on Windows. Next, you're going to need a printer of some sort. You can get by with a consumer grade, especially if you're just going to build one of these every so often. But considering how much printing I do, I go for more professional grade like this office grade right here and this monster office grade right here. Now this printer and this one right here I got from my local Free Geek. This one was $25. This one was $5. So if you have an e-recycler that sells these things for like stupid cheap, you might be able to come across a very nice professional office grade printer like these and get them for incredibly cheap. This is the small printer and this is the big printer. Now if you do plan on printing more than just one standee every now and then, I would suggest also looking into getting third-party cartridges for the type of printer you own. But with that said, there is one other thing I do want to mention. If you actually are planning on getting a printer for this type of stuff, I was just getting a printer with multiple cartridges, like this one right here, for instance. As you can see, each color has its own individual cartridge. This actually tends to last a lot more longer than just the two cartridge types, just one black and a multicolor cartridge. Now, as far as I know, Canon, HP, Epson, and I think Brother do make printers with this type of cartridge layout, but I don't know what they're actually called. But if you want my recommendations on a printer, you can't go wrong with an Epson. You can't go wrong with an HP. Though I much prefer the HPs over the Epsons because I've been using them forever and I don't have a problem with them. Just buy third party for these things. Alright, so this is everything else you'll need. You're going to need a hot glue gun, low temp, high temp, it doesn't really matter. Glue sticks for said hot glue gun. Now it doesn't matter what size you got. I got minis, but I'm actually going to buy a normal big one today. And that's for another project that's actually for Mikamo. But for when I build these standees, I tend to use a high temp when I go to actually build in the superstructure. That way, so I'm not constantly having to sit and wait for the low temp to reheat up and whatnot. You'll need cardstock. It doesn't matter what type you actually get. I just go for this weight and this brightness. This is a cardstock I've been using for years now. It's from my local Walmart. If you have a Walmart, you should be able to find these yourself. And of course, same thing with the hot glue sticks. I use the A-Tech brand. Again, these are the glue sticks and the hot glue guns I've been using for years. Jumbo craft sticks. You can get by with the normal size craft sticks, but I tend to use a jumbo. That way, so I can have a lot more surface area for the paper to actually adhere to and whatnot. And it tends to be a lot less actual popsicle sticks needed in the superstructure compared to like the normal size. A box cutter, a good pair of scissors, and obviously clear tape. I may have forgot something, but I can't remember it off the top of my head because, again, I'd never really done a video like this before, so please bear with me. So the next thing we need to do is we need to actually find a character that we want to convert to a life-size standee. There's one more thing I do want to mention about my particular HP printer right here, is that the actual paper load tray thing can fully take one whole ream of cardstock. So I can just load this thing up with one ream, and I won't have to touch it for a long time when it comes to paper, let alone ink. Next is finding the image you want to use. So for me, I'm using this particular site right here, and this is the standee I'm going to be building right now. You can also use a site like this, but as you can see, I inspect elemented a lot of images for obvious reasons. But you can use this image here, or this site here, to find an image you want to use for a life-size standee. Usually someone will upload a very high-res body pillow scan, and you can use that as a standee, which is something I've actually been doing for the most part. But every now and then we get the artist for a virtual novel like this one right here that actually releases very nice full-size images of the characters, and in this particular instance has an even has a height gauge, so I can easily scale her properly. So obviously the next step is, once you get the image and whatnot that you want to do, you download it to the desktop. And of course my computer doesn't want to do that for me. So as you can see, there it is right there. But with that said, as you can tell, it's 2000 by 3000. If I was going to use an image like this, it would be too small. But if you get an image that's around this size, you'll be perfectly fine. So you can completely skip this step. So what we need to actually do is we need to AI upscale this image. That way so we can have a bigger image to work with. And it'll have a higher quality and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and look for an AI upscale. The AI upscale I tend to use is this one right here. Unfortunately, you have like five free things like once a week, but of course I can just use a VPN and boost that up to indefinite. So since I don't want to waste my free next upscale on another character I'm going to do, I'll just explain the next steps. So what you want to do if you're going to use this one, select 400, then just go to here, and then select and open, and then just hit start. And then just let it sit for a bit, and eventually you'll get an option to hit download. Hit download, you'll get a second tab open with the new image, and then you just copy that over to the desktop. I already done this, so I already got the image already set up. Here's the same image, but it's been AI upscaled. If you actually go here, you can see it's significantly bigger than what I originally started out with. So what we need to do now is we need to just go and edit as much of the image as possible. You may not have to do this, but I do for this particular one. And I'm going to try and make the crop as close to the character as possible. That way so I can have it as accurate as possible. And again, I already done this, so I'm just going to leave it alone. So of course, once you've done that, make a copy, save the copy, you'll get the crop you want. And of course, here is the final size crop right here. And you can already see I already kind of scaled everything already, so I know what I need to set it to. But I actually need to rescale her again and get everything proper. So to do this, I'm going to take that exact same image. I'm going to make a copy of it, put it to the desktop, and then I'm going to open it up in MS Paint. Then I'm going to bring up MS Paint. I'm going to tell it to go as small as physically possible. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little black line right here, and I'm just going to go, no, not that. Select this, solid, black. And then I'm just going to make a nice little line like this, go all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to have the top of it go right to the very top of her head, and I'm going to exclude the ears. That's the way these characters are actually scaled. you ignore the ears for at least this particular set of virtual novel characters. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to reopen it up, go back into crop, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this all the way over to the black line. Then I'm going to save as is, reopen it up in MS Paint again, go as zoomed out as possible, then drag like this to where we just have this. And then what we're going to be able to do is we're just going to be able to use this to properly scale everything. So I'm going to save, and now I need to figure out how tall she is. So give me a second to get that situated. Now here's why I actually told you to make a copy. So when it comes to actually scaling everything, we need the height exactly the same. So if I go to here, you can see that's what the height axis is, 8,315. If I go to the one we just edited, it's 1 pixel smaller, but that's not really going to do any difference. I don't know why it's a pixel smaller. Maybe I did something wrong. I don't know, but 1 pixel smaller is totally fine. It's still generally within the same height axis. So once we get the scaling figured out, we can just apply that to the actual finalized model and print it out, and it'll print as it should to the proper height. So I'm going to figure out getting the height of her and then come back. I think she's like 4'7". Since the artist didn't actually say her proper height, I'm just going to guesstimate it. I'm going to say she's 138 centimeters tall, which is about 4'5". And considering she's supposed to be a Chihuahua, or a Chihuahua, how you pronounce it, her being 4'5" makes total sense. Also, since she's a Chihuahua, she's going to be really fucking annoying. One thing I forgot to mention is that I'm using US letter. If you use a different type of size paper, your scaling is going to be a little more different because, again, I only use US letter. I think other people use A4. I can't remember for certain. But since the current girl I want to build is going to be 4'5", I'm going to use my current standee, which is 5'9", to figure out how many sheets tall makes up 4 feet 5 inches. So I'm going to get my tape ruler, figure that out, and come back. Alright, so I figured it out. I ignored the small little slither of paper right there, and I just went from the full sheet upwards. So I need a grand total of 6 1/4 sheets tall, which is about here or so. So now I'm going to be able to add that into MS Paint when I go to scale her, and then once I get the first set print, I'll be able to figure out if I have it scaled up properly or not. So I will come back. Sorry, man, I was going to show you what we need to do next. So taking the image we turned into a small little slither earlier, we're going to reopen it up in MS Paint. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go File, Print, Setup. You're going to get this. I'm going to go Portrait. We should all go to Portrait. Adjust. So as you can see, if we set to just 100%, it's going to be 9 pages long. That's way too long. So what we need to do is we need to bring it down to where it's 6 pages. So I'm going to say 80%. Nope. Okay, so 60% for this particular one means goes all the way to 6 pages. So now we need to figure out where the bottom of the black bar right here actually ends. So we're going to go back to Paint or Print Preview. We're going to scroll all the way down to the very last page. And as you can see, it's at the quarter mark, but I think it needs to be right about here or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to page setup, and I'm just going to type in and I'm just going to say 65. That's too long. So I'm going to back it down. I'm going to say 63. That may be correct, but I'm going to see what 62 produces. $62 actually looks correct. So what we're going to do now is we're going to print this. So what we're going to do now is print, properties or preferences, print quality, draft. Reason why we're choosing draft is because we want to use as little ink as possible in this particular step. We want to try and get this as accurate as possible. Granted, if you don't care about accuracy, you can just print as is, but I want to try and get him as accurate as possible. So we're going to hit OK, and then we're going to hit print. And we're going to let the printer print and come back. All right, so everything's printed on my end. Another thing I want to do is I want to see what the print levels are going to be like after I get done printing this character out. These are the current ink levels after printing this character and printing the other one I just showed you. I reprinted her once, so this is all the ink I currently have. I doubt I'll make much of a dent on this when we're done. So this step is a little optional, but I'm going to remove the extra bit of paper that I actually don't need for this. You may also want to take this opportunity to label the very top of the strip you just made. That way so you don't mess anything up when it comes to testing out the scaling and whatnot. So what we're going to do to connect these is just cut this little border off, leave this border, cut this border off, and do that for every single one. And then just use clear tape or tape in general, just line them up and just add a little piece of tape. So let me go and show you what I mean by that. So as you can see, border cut, border cut, border cut. And then I just take this sheet right here and just butt up against the line. And it's basically a puzzle, but not as complicated. So I'm going to get this whole thing put together and come back. Alright, so currently this one is 2 inches shorter than it should be. So I'm going to go and add like maybe another point to the percentage and come back. Alright, so I just took the very end piece and just cut the size, or did the cutting I need to. And now I got it scaled up properly. So for this particular standee, if I go to File, Setup, the percentage is 64%, which is actually the same percentage of the when I previously scaled everything. So if I actually go to the original image I used and bring it up to not that MS Paint, you can see when I put the little percentage here, I set to 64%. So all I gotta do now is I go Print, Preferences, Quality, Best. Now the only reason why I'm doing best for mine is that if I do normal on my current printer, I get a bunch of pixel print and whatnot, or whatever you call it. And if I put it to best, it more melds everything together. So I'm going to hit OK and print. And it'll just take a bit and it'll print from the printer, so I'll be right back. Of course, I completely forgot to put the scaling into the photo before hitting print. Stupid me. Alright, type in 64. And as you can see, the page height is exactly the same, but the width has gone up by 3, or in this case 2. So now I did it properly. I should now be able to print. There we go, 18 pages. So I'll come back when it's all done. Alright, so here's the part where hopefully I can explain the whole process. So everything's now been printed. So this particular piece, or this particular standee, it's three sheets wide, and I believe, 6 sheets long? It's actually been like a couple hours since I initially started this video, so I was trying to figure out how exactly to do this. So I'm going to take the first 3 pieces of paper, I'm going to move the other ones out of the way, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this border off here. I'm going to leave this one alone, and I'm going to cut this border off here, and I'm going to leave this one alone. So let me do that all off camera and come back. Alright, so I got the border pieces cut the way I want. Now of course yours may be different depending on the width of paper, but again mine's 3. So what I'm actually going to do also is I'm going to remove some of the excess from like right here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave just enough left over That way, so when I go to attach the other piece, that way, so when I go to attach the pieces together lengthwise, I can have enough room right here to do some adjustment tape to make sure I line everything up. Now, you don't have to do this step, but I just did it anyways for my sanity's sake. All right, so when it comes to actually lining or attaching these two pieces together, all I really do is just let's see, just line them up as accurate as possible on both top and bottom. And then I take some clear tape make sure everything is aligned at least at the bottom. Put a little bit right there. And then realign the top piece here. Make sure I don't have any weird, it's good. I'll actually realign the bottom piece here. Just need to bring it in just a little bit. There we go, that. Of course, that's not realigned anymore. Alright, so that's more or less aligned, even though it doesn't look like it at the angle I'm sitting, but it is. And then I'm just going to take the exact same clear tape, give a rough estimate, then just like this. And that's more or less how you attach the two pieces together. Now, another step that you don't have to do, but it makes a better cleaning looking standee, is to take a jumbo popsicle stick and just cut one of the ends off and have a nice little flat piece right here. And then just take that flat little piece and just rub it against the, or press it against the tape. That way so it more fully adheres to the paper. And then flip it over. Like that. And then same thing again with the piece of jumbo popsicle stick. Good grief, I can't speak. And then just cut off the excess. And then repeat the same process again on the next sheet. Like I said before, this type of stuff comes to me naturally, so it's a tad hard for me to actually explain the process. But hopefully you can understand what I'm doing with how I'm actually doing this. Now, one thing you may note from time to time, I don't know if you can see it, is that sometimes the two bottoms or maybe the two tops of the sheets of paper don't actually line up, while the actual image itself lines up completely fine. That's completely normal. It's due to the way these printers actually print. But as long as the images themselves line up to each other, you can completely ignore like these little overlaps and whatnot. And that wasn't a full-on 50-50, but whatever, it'll still hold. Alright, and just like that, layer 1 is done. I gotta do this now 5 more times, and since I'm more or less showing what needs to be done, I'll do that all off camera and then I'll come back. And of course, I completely forgot to show me doing the same thing for the other side too. Like I said, these things come to me naturally, so I may forget something, like I just did. Granted, I didn't really need to show this part, but I still want to add it in. All right, now now one sheet's done, or one level's done, or piece or whatever. So I'll come back when I get the rest of them done. All right, I got all the pieces connected. So the next step is to finalize the actual build by putting the pieces together lengthwise. Now, when it comes to stuff like the legs, like for instance these ones, I just did them individually because, well, they're not really connected to anything. So that's why they're like this. So when it comes to connecting the pieces lengthwise, it's literally just repeating what we did widthwise, but for, again, length. So just like before, I'll just go and cut this off, leave this, cut this off, and just do that down the stack and whatnot, and then just of course connect the pieces together. So I'm gonna come back again when I get all this done, and if you're, and I was just actually using something like a kitchen table, so you can have a nice bigger surface to work on. Luckily my table is a little bit more bigger, and I can move it around a little bit to where I can easily do this in my room. But if I was doing a bigger character, it would obviously be on the kitchen table. That way so I can have more room to actually spread everything out. So I'm going to get everything touched lengthwise and come back. Alright, so with that said, now the part I actually tend to have issues with when it comes to explaining how to actually stitch the character together and whatnot. So I'm going to get my tripod set up and try and figure out how to properly explain this. So I'll be right back. Alright, so with that said, next step is to obviously cut out the standee itself. I really trying to explain how that works. Just cut on the black line, I guess. So I'm actually going to do that on the kitchen table because let's be fair, my table is too small for that. Even though it's a completely new different table, it's not big enough for this. So I'm going to get all this cut out in the kitchen and come back. Alright, so with the standee cut out, and the reason why I'm in my bedroom again is because I live with my parents and they decided to run the dishwasher. So the last thing I want to have is the dishwasher noise in the background of my video. So with that said, the next step is to get the popsicle sticks in a way to where you can actually use them. What do I mean by that? Building out the superstructure is like building a building is the easiest way I can explain it. The more imperfections in the wood you use, the more horrible the actual structure will be and the end result. So as you can see, basically every single wooden popsicle stick I have right here and in this box and in these two boxes here are all defects. This is the worst defect rate I've had out of these jumbo popsicle sticks in a very, very long time. The only time I can think of defect rate of this bad was like maybe 2015 or something like that. And the only reason why I'm not being so bitchy about this is because these sticks were bought basically in the middle of COVID. So obviously that explains why the sticks themselves are in such piss poor condition. So I'm just going to burn these and buy a new batch of jumbo popsicle sticks. Hopefully my local Walmart has some of them in stock. If not, then I'll have to order them offline and put this video on hold until I can actually get some sticks. But we need jumbo popsicle sticks, or just general sticks in general, that are as straight as possible. And the easiest way to do this is to just take a wooden popsicle stick and just put it on a flat surface like a table. For instance, this stick right here, which you can't really see due to it being way too blown out, but you can see it is not straight worth a stick on either side. This I could not use because if I use this, the actual bends will just exacerbate as I go along. And instead of having a nice straight standee like her, we're going to have a wavy standee, and it's just going to look atrocious. So like I said, I need to go and get a new batch of jumbo popsicle sticks. And unfortunately, I know all three of these boxes are all defects, and I know I can't use them. So I will come back, like I said, when I get my new batch of jumbo popsicle sticks. Alright, next day I got my jumbo popsicle sticks and went to bed. So when it comes to actually getting everything situated for the jumbo popsicle sticks, I think I already said it before, but you need to try and find the most straightest ones you can find. If they're a little off, that's completely fine. But if they're completely all over the place, like I showed in the previous box, you just can't use them. Like for instance, this one right here, if I flip it over, it might still be, yeah, if I flip it over like this, I can use it. It's not 100% straight, but it's a lot more straighter than the last batch. This one, I could probably use as a secondary, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find the straightest ones to be the beginning layer of the superstructure and whatnot. So what you can do is you can just find ones as you go along, or what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find out as many of these as I can, and just bring them and bring everything over to the kitchen table so I can actually start building out. So once I get a good amount of straights figured out and piled up and whatnot, I will come back and we'll start on the next step. Here are all the ones I managed to find currently right now that I'm going to be using. This is definitely not enough, but it's enough to get me started. And this is the defects that are still decent enough to be used for other projects, but for what I'm doing, not for this. So the defect rate on this box alone seems to be about like a 50-50, which is usually about normal for these boxes. The other two boxes, like I showed previously, their defect rate was abnormal, and again, that's because they're about mid-COVID, while these ones are post, and the quality's gone up significantly, thank God. Luckily, with this character being so small, she fits on the table fairly fine. So when it comes to actually building out the superstructure, you gotta more or less think of it like a building. How is the thing going to support itself so it doesn't collapse? So this is the start of the superstructure. So all I gotta do now is start hot gluing them into place, and then start connecting all the pieces. And then once that's done, then I start layering. I'm thinking I'm gonna go for like maybe 2 layers, because again, jumbo popsicle sticks are a lot more easier to work with than the normal ones. So the layering amount really doesn't need that much, especially considering this one right here is only like 4'5". So there's not going to be as much weight as there was on like the big one I showed off at the very beginning and whatnot. So I'm going to get all that situated and come back. Alright, got the first layer done. I even connected some of the few parts that are not superstructure related together. That way so I at least have something put together. So when it comes to the main superstructure and layering, all you really do is you just go like this. That's really all you got to do. So, of course, I'm making it very simplified, but it really is just that simple. And of course, you can do this as many times as you need, depending on the size of the model and how robust you actually want it to be. For her, I think I'm going to go 2 layers more thick. So this one and then like another layer. Maybe 4, but I think 3 layers total is more than enough for a character of 4'5". But if you're going for a taller character, I'll go for like maybe 4 layers or even 5 layers, depending on how the character is actually designed. So I'm going to layer everything up and come back. Alright, and the superstructure is now being complete for my particular standee. Again, yours can be completely different, again, depending on the body type of the character and how much mass of paper there is. But again, since this one's so small, she really doesn't need much in the way of a superstructure compared to someone like her, for instance. As you can see, her superstructure is kind of simplistic in its own right, but it also melds to her specific body. And of course, I just had to go and bend the paper, go figure. Well, either way. Her again, it's kind of the same, and thickness-wise, It's actually like one extra popsicle stick thicker, and that's because when it comes to these particular standees I build, I actually have them standing up against the wall. Now, if you're going to actually have them stand independently from like a wall and whatnot, you may want to look into adding in a little separate piece right here to actually hold them up and whatnot. But for instance, for someone like her, she'll stand completely fine on the side of my bed if I place her properly. But of course, like I said, she's going to be more or less right here. And then I'm going to build the rest of the characters as they get released. I gotta build 2 more. I gotta build what's supposed to be a pure breed Pomeranian and a Shibaru, or how you pronounce that weird little wild dog meme. But yeah, those 2 characters will obviously be built off camera. But I just wanted to use this one as got to at least have some type of tutorial out there for if someone wants to build these standees. They can at least hopefully try and replicate what I did with their particular standee. Also, why exactly did I decide to choose a petite/lolly type character to show the tutorial for a standee when I have this beautiful full tall girl right here I could have used? It's really simple. I want to see if some Twitter retard comes across this video, clips it out of context without watching the full thing, uploads the clip to Twitter, gets a bunch of likes and comments and whatnot, giving me something to laugh at. Because let's be fair, the anime Twitter community is full of retarded people that absolutely despise petite/lolly shaped girls like this one right here. Fun fact, Twitter, this girl isn't real. She can't harm you, I can't harm her. You know why? She's not real and she's made out of paper, as you saw throughout the rest of this video. The fact that you guys can't distinguish a anime character to a real life person really goes to show how delusional and how goddamn fucking retarded you all truly are. Get off Twitter and touch fucking grass. So, with that said, hopefully this tutorial was competent enough to allow you to figure out how to build these standees yourselves. Again, I've tried doing this type of video quite a few times, but never liked how it came out because I don't know if I was able to properly convey the whole process of building these things because, again, they just come to me naturally, just like with the life-size figurines I show off and whatnot. But like I said, these things are far more easier to build than the full 3D models that I've built in the past and whatnot. So, again, hopefully this tutorial was good enough to allow someone to actually figure out how to build these things.